Hey y'all, welcome to this little home automation weather tectorial that I'm going to put together. I've written a blog post about my fascination with weather, and I bought a personal weather station last year. It's a Ecowitt. It sits on top of my house, like on top of a mast, so it's like well above my house. And we've gotten pretty good data from it. One of the neat things that I've done with it is anytime that it rains, because it has a rain, like a rain gauge bucket, anytime it rains, it it sends us a notification in Home Assistant and lets us know that it's raining. That might seem like really simplistic, right? If you have a weather app, you're probably going to know when it's raining anyways, but it's nice to know when it's actually raining outside at your house. In the South, this time of year, we have a lot of like pop-up showers and like really kind of like sparse systems that move through, so knowing when it's raining at home is kind of cool. So the use case that I ran into over the past couple of weeks was I finally found a replacement to Dark Sky. Dark Sky is a pretty popular weather app that a lot of folks use. I used it a long time as a cyclist, just being able to like plan your rides better and things like that. Apple bought Dark Sky. I'd say probably 3, 4, maybe even 5 years ago, and of course, like most big tech companies, like they're acquiring these small companies not because they love this app that other people love, but because the company had data or people that were valuable to them. So listening to a podcast a couple of weeks ago. I think it was MKBHD. It's kind of a technology podcast. Marquise was talking about like a replacement weather app that he's been using in lieu of Dark Sky called Carrot. And the neat thing about Carrot is it is actually it's actually just an app, and the app can be skinned in different ways, to your liking or to your preference. So of course mine is skinned to look like Dark Sky, to kind of replicate what I've used in the past. And you can see it looks almost identical to Dark Sky. But the really neat thing about this app is you can change the sources. So you can use Dark Sky as your modeling source, Apple Weather, AccuWeather, like all kinds of different weather sources. But one thing I noticed was down here there's this personal weather station setting, and I'm like, oh man, this is super cool. Like being able to like pull in my own PWS as a data source. But the only weather stations that this app supported were Nadamo, Tempest, and then this PWS weather stations, which I'd never heard of before. So of course, that I had to go down this rabbit hole and better understand like what is this service, and is there any way for me to connect to it. So that's sort of what brought us here today, right? So my system is basically, like I said, this Ecowitt WS69. It is battery powered, but also has like a little solar panel on the top. We've had it for about a year and have never had to change batteries on it. And primarily because it uses low powered RF to for the weather station itself, for the array to send to this little gateway that sits inside of your house, power via USB, and it's essentially just a bridge to IP or to your Wi-Fi network. And then that little guy there is really small. It's like teeny tiny. That guy there, kind of beams back to this application, and this is what the hosted web server on that little guy looks like. There are a couple of different weather services you can connect to. Ecowitt has their own, ecowitt.net, but I really didn't want to use that. It's a Chinese company. Wasn't super stoked on sending all my weather data to the CCP. It does support Weather Underground natively, so I send all of my data to Weather Underground as well. Never heard of these two, of Weather Cloud or Weather Observations website, but there's a section down here for customized, and it's just like you only have one, customized section, and you can send it to, some other third-party service. I, of course, send all of mine to Home Assistant, so I can, visualize and use all that data, for automations and alerts and all that kind of good stuff. Plus, saving it locally for historical data reasons. So I knew that there was going to have to be like an intermediary here, since there wasn't a second customized section that I could use to send to this PWS service. I was going to have to figure out like a way to, to get it from Home Assistant to that service. So just to give you a view into what the Home Assistant side looks like. So there is, of course, a Ecowitt add-on for Home Assistant. So it's really just kind of like a listener, and you can specify any port. I just happen to listen on 4199, and you'll notice back on the Ecowitt device itself, that's the port that it's sending to, and I have it sending every 5 seconds. So you'll see like all this amazing, nerdy data that gets pulled into Home Assistant. And of course, because it's Home Assistant, if you look at the actual the actual entity or sensor within Home Assistant, look at that, sensor.outdoor_temperature. So that means it's it's an entity within Home Assistant that you can do something with, and that's something that that I ended up doing is using a REST command. So you can create, just arbitrary REST commands within your Home Assistant configuration. And you can see this really long, string that I have in here. I'll pull that up real quick in Postman just so it's a little bit easier to, to break down. But it's essentially just a string of key value pairs. So the ID is my weather station ID, the password. Cool thing, you can actually store it in your configuration as a secret. So although it's going to be transmitting, that key or password, to the service, once, in transit, it's over SSL, so it's not like it's transiting, the internet in the clear. And then like worst case, like this password is just, to be able to access the API to upload sensor data. The hardest part was trying to figure out like what the keys were that were acceptable for this service. Their API wasn't terribly well documented, and there was some conflicting data in the documentation. So just looking through a couple of different, Reddit posts and forums and things like that, I finally figured out, all of the different keys over here on the left that I could map my sensor data to. And then using templating within Home Assistant, you can do really any kind of math on this, right? So for these, I'm sending like wind gust data rounded to, to just 2 decimal places. So really, really simple math. And let's see. Oh, in the like wind direction, it is sending it just as an integer, right? So that there's no decimal places. It is just 127, which indicates 127 degrees, which you'll see gets interpreted into cardinal directions in the application. So built my string, put it together in a REST command in Home Assistant, and then when you're building something like this and testing it, you can do a couple of different things. The first you can do, just to make sure it works, well, you can use Postman to make sure that like your syntax is right, and then you can come into Developer Tools, Services, and then you can find REST. You can find that actual REST command and then call that service directly from there. Now, once you've figured out that it works and everything is all good there, What I did was I just created a really, really simple automation. And the trigger is a time pattern with /5. So that means that it's going to execute this every 5 minutes. There's all kinds of fun syntax that you can use for time pattern triggers within Home Assistant. And then the action, once again, super simple. It's just running that RESTful API command. And then voila, like if you look at my personal weather station on pwsweather.com, you can see all of that good data getting pulled into there. So temperature, humidity, pressure, if there's precipitation that day, dew point, so on and so forth. Some of the data, like cloudy, for example, you can push that in there, but it's probably better to rely on the forecast from other data sets that get pulled into pwsweather.com. Once again, you can see the wind. So right now it's 1.1 mile per hour, and that degree gets converted into ESE, for example. So in Home Assistant, let's see if we can find that. So wind direction, 105 degrees in Home Assistant, and then it gets put into something that's a little more human readable as ESE. The other neat thing about PWS Weather is it also catalogs historical data. So I've only been capturing like a day's worth of data in here so far, but you can go back and see historical data. Weather Underground does the same thing. So if you're sending your weather data to Weather Underground, you'll see the exact same information. I do think though that the PWS interface is much prettier and easier to navigate than the Weather Underground data. I do have a couple of other key value pairs that I sent a support request into PWS Weather to see if they could tell me what the value for solar radiation and for UV index, so I can send that information from my weather station as well. I don't know. So it's showing that it's getting solar radiation data, and I'm not sure where it is getting that from. What's being like reported in here does not match up with what my weather station is showing. So it must be getting this solar radiation data from some other data source. So this is just kind of a long nerdy way to fix my problem of wanting to get my personal weather station data in this new little Carrot app that emulates dark sky. And from my weather station that's sitting on my roof, beaming via 900 megahertz RF, to the little gateway sending it to Home Assistant, and then Home Assistant updating this weather service that the app on my phone can read data from. So super nerdy. It was a fun problem to solve more than anything, but to me it also shows the power of APIs and programmability and automation, right? You might have some device that doesn't work natively with an application, but through the power of APIs and automation, you can kind of tie all those things together and make it work. So thanks for watching, and yeah, hopefully I'll make some more of these little tectorial videos. See you guys later.